This video is going to cover the for loop in Python. So the for loop is a loop that usually runs a predefined amount of times. So the syntax for the for loop is like this: for, and then some variable that you name, and then the keyword in, and then we say value 1, 2, 3, and then we can display something. Right, in this case we're going to print none. So this is a structure for a for loop. In this case, this loop is gonna run 3 times. How do we know that? Because we told it. We're gonna run for 1, for 2, and for 3. Each time the loop runs, the current number, in this case the first number is going to be 1, is set to this variable num. Now this num variable can be any name. I just named it num right now, so it's important to keep that in mind. So if we run this loop, it's going to run 3 times, and it's going to print the current number. So let's go ahead and save this here. So as you can see, 1, 2, 3. So what happened? We told the for loop, I want you to execute 3 times by providing this structure, and we put the numbers 1, 2, and 3. And then we say each time you loop, save it to the variable num. This variable is called the target variable, and then we want you to print the variable. So did it print it? Yes. 1, 2, 3. So it looped 3 times, and it printed the variable 3 times. We will, in future courses, we will discuss this structure more. But for now, let's just take it that that's the way we want to use the for loop with explicit numbers. You can also use a for loop to let's create a new file to print strings. For example, we can do for name in, and then we provide strings, and then we're going to print. So in this case, we're following the same structure as before. We have a variable name, which is a target variable, and then we tell Python loop 3 times, but this time we're going to give you 3 strings. Each time you loop, print a string for me. We're going to run it. Not there. Here. Sample for C. So as you can see, it went around 3 times. Larry, Mo, Curly. So what happens on the first loop? It prints name, comes over here. That's the second loop, sets it to here, and then it comes here to this statement, and then we print Mo, and then it jumps to Curly, saves it over here, and then we print the name. So that's how this came about. We can also go ahead and create another file. Use the for loop in a different way. For example, for I, and again, that's a target variable. It can be any name we want as long as it follows Python variable naming conventions. For I in 5, print I, and then say hello. How's that? So what's gonna happen? Well, we know it's going to loop 5 times. And let's see what values it prints. So we're going to run it. Okay. And then sample 4D. So it looped around 5 times, but notice that it starts at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So in most programming languages, when you loop through things or through objects or through lists, arrays, what have you, most of the time those are 0 index, meaning that it'll start counting at 0. So in this case, we just saw that that's the case. If we want to start at 1, we can. We use the same syntax that we see there, but we say for I in range, and then we're telling Python start at 1, go all the way to 5, and how many times is it going to loop? Well, unfortunately, since it's going to start at 1, it should display 4 numbers, but let's see if that's the case. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and it goes all the way to 5. If we wanted it to go to 5 loops, then we would have to do this from 1 to 6, sorry. So then it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's interesting here is that this range is a function that the Python programmers created for us for simplicity. But if we do this, so this is this incrementer by 1 all the way to 10, but now we're telling Python, instead of counting by 1, as we saw over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we want you to count by 2. So then what we do is we're going to run it. So now it does 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Interesting. We can use the target variable to print whatever we want. In this case, say we want to print squares from 0 to 10. So then we tell Python for and then we do print, and then you all recall that asterisk means power, and then we say the power of 2. So let's see. Well, let me start a new shell. Then we run it. So as you can see, we start at 0, and then we explicitly told Python to 11 because it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it starts at 0 all the way to 10. In reality, it does how many iterations? Let's see that. So we're going to run it again. The iterations were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and it's expected because we told Python to go from 0 to 11, meaning 11 times. Just to prove that, here we go. From 0 to 10 is 11, so 11 loops, 11 iterations. if we want to recreate the problem that we solved for the while loop, we can certainly do that. So I'm going to create a new file. A new shell also. So first, we know that the for loop runs a set number of times. So if we wanted to run a set number of times, then we want to ask the user how many grades do you want to enter. So we are going to say grade count equals, and then we're going to ask the user how many grades to enter. And then we need a grade total variable. We're going to set it to 0. And then we need a lines variable. That's to gather our output and then display it in the table at the end. So we're going to save this file, sample for E, and then we're going to create our for loop. Remember, the syntax is for, and then target variable, and then we're going to use a range function, and we're going to say up to count. We want to prompt the user for a grade, so we're going to call a float, collect input from the keyboard, so enter grade. That's what the user is going to see. We're going to sum the grade. Let's make this consistent. Into grade total sum variable, so plus equals grade. And then we're going to do the same to the lines. We're going to say lines keep on appending or concatenating. Well, let's go ahead and do what we did for the loop. I think we asked them for a course. Enter course. So we want to say lines plus equal. So the current line plus equal the course. And then we want to put it together, and we want to create a tab for now, and then we want to stitch it together with the grade treated as a string. We want to concatenate or put it together and tell Python give me a new line. So what's happening here, we're saying lines equals lines, so this is shortcut for lines equals lines plus course plus tab plus string and new line. So each loop is going to save the grade and the course, create a new line, tabbed, and then we're going to average. So grade total divided by grade count. We're going to print the average, and we'll print the lines. So let's see, summarize. We're going to ask the user how many grades do you want to enter. We're going to treat the input as an integer, and we're going to save it to a grade count variable. We have another variable, we're going to set it to 0. That's our summation or aggregator accumulator variable, running total variable. And then we have a lines that we're setting to a blank string, and this is going to tabulator or summer grades, and this is going to collect what the user entered on the keyboard, and we're just going to save it into a lines variable. So again, let me go over this. So lines plus equal means each time get the course, a tab, a grade, and a new line, and append it to lines. The next time whatever lines is, which will be the previous course and grade, append what the user enters now, and we'll do that for each loop. So how many grades to enter? 3. English 1395. Enter course COSC 1300. 90. Math 1300. 80. And Python displays the lines for us. So we told Python use the lines variable to accumulate data of strings and add a tab, and for each loop create a new line. So that's what it did, and then we printed the average. So we print a blank space right here, we print the lines variable right here, and then we print average. So that is how you would use the for loop to loop a predefined amount of times. We ask the user how many grades to enter. The user's like 3. And then, of course, if we wanted to enhance this program, we could. Like, we could break out of the loop, but since this is just an example, we are not going to touch that subject. I wanted to also cover one more thing about the for loop. Let me see, I know. So we can also, so if we can count up, we can count down. So I wanted to show that briefly. Close this, and I'm going to close this shell, and we're going to save this file as sample for F. And what we're going to do here is we're going to show that with the for loop, for I in range 100 to 1 and count down by 2. So what we're doing here is now we're telling Python start at 100 all the way to 1 and decrease by 2 each time, or 1 or 3 or 4, it doesn't matter. But here we just want to show that we can count from largest to smallest. So as you can see, it does that. And that'll be useful for use cases that we may run into in assignments. I think that is all I wanted to cover as far as for loops is concerned. That will be the end of this video.